Welcome to everybody to this evening's Commonwealth Club program with legendary outdoors writer Tom Steenstra. I'm Dan Brecky. You may have heard me on the radio in the past. I'm semi-retired after 18 years at KQED. Before I got to public radio, I spent a dozen years at the San Francisco Examiner. And there, I encountered a writer who was dressed like he might have commuted to Fifth and Minna straight off the John Muir Trail. Tom Steenstra was raised in Palo Alto, dreamed of playing Major League Baseball, and fell in love with sports writing as a teenager. But he soon felt an urge to do something more active than sit in the press box. He heard the call of the wild. At the age of 26, he took over as outdoors editor of the San Francisco Examiner and began blazing a trail that has made him one of our most honored outdoors writers. During his long career at the Examiner, Chronicle, and KCBS Radio, he won numerous awards from the Outdoor Writers Association of America for his newspaper and radio journalism and photography. He's a member of the California Outdoors Hall of Fame, alongside figures like John Muir and Ansel Adams. He's the author of best-selling guidebooks like Moon's California Camping and 52 Weekend Adventures in Northern California. Tom is a storyteller's storyteller. That's true whether he's describing a pre-dawn trip through the Golden Gate to try to hook a monster great white shark or sharing details about a hike in a local park. But more than providing simple entertainment, the thousands of stories he's shared serve as an invitation to join him in exploring the mountains, forests, and waters that he loves so. And now comes his new book, Heaven Delayed, One Man's Survival of 16 Near-Death Encounters. Yes, the episodes he's going to tell you about are harrowing, and none more so than his sudden discovery that he faced a cancer diagnosis so dire that doctors at first believed he only had a 50-50 chance of surviving for 1 week. His 1 in a million survival story is a tribute to his personal toughness, to the love and support of family and friends, and modern medical technology deployed by a team of highly skilled doctors. With Heaven Delayed, Tom is extending a different kind of invitation to his readers. This time, it's to explore a dimension beyond his stories of survival, to embrace the joy of every new day and join him in contemplating our mortality and what may lie beyond. And with that, please welcome Tom Steenstra.
All right, I made it. How y'all doing? Thank you. I want you all to stand up. Everybody, stand up. Okay, I've got a little lesson for you. If there's one thing you remember, it's this. Okay, everybody put their arms out. Okay? That's how long we have to live. Now, take your right thumb and forefinger and go like that. That's what we have left. So use that time wisely and do what you really want and be with the people that you really love. I can't tell you, that's the biggest lesson that I've learned by surviving all this stuff. Okay, you can all go back down. You go around the world in the Eastern Hemisphere, and what they say is the odds of being born is the same as throwing a life ring out on the ocean. And at that exact moment, a big green sea turtle that's blind comes up from the bottom and pokes its head right through the middle of it. That's the odds of being born and being alive. So therefore, it's a miracle that we're alive, whether you have faced anything or not. And I know most of you probably have. But that's a lesson to treat every moment alive like it's a gift. It's really important to keep that in mind. Now, I just saw the book about 10 minutes ago for the first time. Pretty cool. This is the cover picture. The artist, Dan Blanchard at the San Francisco Chronicle, did this picture. And the reason he did it, on one side, my hair is chestnut, and on the other side, it's white. And when I showed up in the doctors, it was all vivid white, and they were very excited about it. And I was at a doctor with my wife, Denise, and the doctor said the same thing. This is great news for you. What this means is the immunotherapy infusions that I was doing at first 2 to 3 weeks and then once a month for an hour, that was igniting my entire immune system to fight the cancer. And it turned anything that was dark white. And the cancer was dark. And so this is a symbol of beating cancer. That's what that picture is all about. Now, this is what I looked like before I had any problems. Then I met women. Then I hit in the back of the head with a hatchet is what happened. And I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But in the meantime, my wife was born just about 2 miles from the Golden Gate Bridge, okay? Isn't that pretty incredible? And it's called the Golden Gate. Here it is on a sunrise morning where the sun rises and it turns the gate gold. That's why it's named that. It's an incredible thing to see from a boat out to sea, looking back. And what I learned many years ago is that is the South Tower in the center there that we're looking at. And in June, like next month, what happens is with the outgoing tides for about 3 hours, when the tides are just right, the water has to speed up to get into the narrow entrance of the gate. And so what happens is all the striped bass hang out right behind the South Tower. And all the small bait fish that come swinging by, they just go out and grab it. I had one night there, I caught 27 striped bass, 10 to 25 pounds in about 2.5 hours. And I have fish there. The guy that taught me this was Chuck Louie, who owns Chucky's Pride out of Fisherman's Wharf. But I have fished with 4 or 5 different people in boats, including my own, during these incredible bites. And one night with my brother, have you ever had that feeling that somebody's looking at you, but you look around and you don't see them? It's like, how did that, wait a minute. You got to trust how you feel, right? And I looked up, and there's a guy who jumped off the bridge, and he's coming straight at me. These are the kind of things that happen to me, right? He misses. Before I could say, look out to the people on the boat, he hits the water, and he's swimming around. 9 people haven't died. He was one of them. We took a gaff hook, hooked him by the belt, and brought him aboard. He looked at me and said, "Is this hell?" My brother says, "It sure is. Tom's catching all the fish." But even he, who decided to give up and jump off the bridge, in the end, he really didn't want to go. He didn't want to end up in hell, and none of us do. And that's what that picture, we took that from my TV show a couple years ago. And by the way, they don't let us fish there anymore. After 9/11, the Coast Guard has banned all boats from getting near the South Tower. So what we have to do instead is you walk out to the end of the old military fortress there, and from there you cast as far as you can and try to get right to the back end of that thing, and those fish are there. Pretty exciting. But it is really fun. I've caught 25 different species of fish in California. I've been to every lake and stream in California. I've been to 1,300 campgrounds. I've hiked about 50,000 miles now. And to this day, and still in my shape, every morning, right? At least an hour and a half out there. And the winter is great. And that's my wife, Denise. And about 5 years ago, I started coughing. We thought it was from the forest fire smoke in Northern California. So we drove up to Portland and then went to Multnomah Falls. That's on the trail going up to Multnomah Falls. And that's where that picture was taken. But on our trip back, I still was coughing. And so we went back to the doctor, and my wife said, the key punchline here is, she told the doctor, Kate West, that I need an x-ray of my lungs. And so we went and got them. I couldn't believe it. Even with my untrained eyes, I could tell I had cancer in this lung right here, a big one and maybe a couple more. And Denise said to me, this isn't right. You owe me 30 more years. And I said to her, I don't know how I'm going to beat this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this. I don't know how. I'm going to try, and I'm going to beat it. And that's why I'm standing here right now. And it started off, there's the x-ray that came back, and they wouldn't tell us what was there, but we could see with our own eyes what was going on. Anyway, this is my hero, Dr. Stephen Chang. He's the top neurosurgeon or brain surgeon in America. And that's who I got. And the way I got into Stanford was because nobody else would take me. We tried calling the #1 cancer surgery hospital in Oregon. They wouldn't even, I couldn't get in. In fact, they said, maybe we can schedule an interview with you in like 6 weeks. And I said to her, 6 weeks? Based on the x-rays, I'll be dead by then. And anyway, I called a friend of mine, Gary Bechtel, and his family built the new wing of Stanford Hospital. And he told me that if I ever needed help getting medical help, give him a call. And then he said to me, so this is what's going to happen. I'm going to call Stanford for you. They will call you to set up you coming in there. But this is it. I don't want you talking to them. He goes, have your wife Denise talk. He goes, people don't get you, Tom. He goes, I get you because I've known you for my whole life. He goes, but Denise, she's kind, loquacious, intelligent. And he goes, they talk to her, you'll get in. And I go, okay, well, they called, and Denise answered. She went through everything with them. We were there in 2 days. And they took me up to where they do the lung cancer treatments, and they wouldn't work on me. They ended up wheeling me down by a wheelchair and did me all these tests and took me down to the emergency, and from there to the neuro guys. And they ran me through all the different scans, and they wouldn't let me go to sleep. The next thing I know, they're worried I might have a stroke and just die right there. I felt fine pretty much, though, but they apparently my, what do they call it? It was over 200, my heart rate. And when I hike, my heart rate's like, resting heart rate's 57. You know, I mean, it's like I never had been through anything like this. So anyway, what ended up happening is they operated that night, and for a while, my heart stopped in surgery. And I was technically, my life stopped. I wasn't dead because they weren't giving up on me, like watching Grey's Anatomy, you know. And I had this thing that happened where, like, for instance, I love climbing Mount Shasta. I've summited 6 times. I probably hiked the rest of it 100 times. And we did it, my wife and me did it. We went up to the old ski bowl, hiked over to the headwaters of Squaw Creek and hiked up to 10,000 feet at above tree line, and just had a ball. But there's a reason I'm telling you this, besides that it's a great place to go. It's probably the best hike in California. And that's my favorite route. It's called Green Butte Ridge. And when there's a lot of snow, you just walk right up. And it's like, you know what, it's only, about 6, 7 miles to the summit? You know, that's just a mile an hour. If you climb 1,000 feet an hour, you'll be up there. From 8,000 feet to 14,000 feet, you'll be up there in 8 hours. And coming down, you just sail down. I mean, a lot of people glissade. It's really fun and easy. And you get up to above Misery Hill, and there's a lava plug dome summit, and it's flat. The last part of the trip, it's flat over this glacial field of snow lines with big cups in it. And that's the plug dome summit. And you go around that and up to the top, and then there's the summit. And so the reason I told you this isn't to go inspire you to climb Shasta, though. It's something that's incredible. It's this. It's that when my life stopped in the hospital, I had a dream that on top of Misery Hill at 14,000 feet, there was a table about 10 feet long, and on one end, on the right end, was Merle Haggard, and on the left end was Waylon Jennings. I knew both of them, and they've both been dead, Waylon 20 years now, and Merle a lot less, maybe approaching 10 years. And these guys were pretty much jerks, okay? Maybe that's why I liked them. I was just like them. And but I have to tell you that they were happy. They were buddies. They couldn't have been kinder and happy to see me. And I said, Merle said, well, what do you got to say, Tom? And Waylon says, well, we've done 1 million interviews. Why don't you ask me, though, what you really want to know for yourself? And then Merle says, yeah, ask him why you can't sing Good-Hearted Woman. And Waylon goes, yeah, that's a good question. You can't do it. And he said, the reason, he goes, because when you play it, you try to be me. And he goes, you can't sing like me. He goes, instead, call this guy. You can track him down. His name is Jimmy Limo. You call him up, and he'll teach you how to do it. And he can sing my part. And so when I got out of the hospital and then the recovery center, about 2 months, I was driving up with Denise. I remember calling Jimmy Limo and told him that I had seen him and that Waylon told me to call him, and you're going to teach me how to sing Good-Hearted Woman. And you know what he said? 2 or 3 days ago, I just started working on that song. I don't even know why. And he came through. He played it for us 2 nights ago. And magic stuff. And then the second time, there was Waylon and me when I first met him. I was a sports writer covering the Oakland Raiders, and he was a friend of Kenny Stabler's, the quarterback. And he was down along the sidelines. So I went down at the past being a sports writer and ran into him. And I asked him, after we talked about 10 minutes, I said, is it okay if I got a picture with you? And he goes, no, great. I couldn't find a photographer. And then I saw this AP photographer, a friend of mine, Paul Sakuma. I said, Paul, would you get a picture of my friend and me and mine that I just met? And he said, I already got it. When you guys first met, I took a picture of you. And I told Waylon, it's like I'd known him for years before this meeting. And he felt the same way, and we became friends for the rest of his life. Really special stuff. And here's one where we're at Clear Lake, and he played a practical joke on me. And I didn't get it right away, and I was feeling really stupid in this exact moment. I was trying to figure out why he was laughing so hard at me. And then, anyway, afterwards, there was a photographer there and took the picture of me being stupid. I love it. It's great stuff. And I ended up with a couple of Waylon's guitars, and I actually sold one to his godson. And that's why I bought Denise's wedding ring. I'm proud of that. It was the right decision, let me tell you. And that's Merle, and he lived not far, actually, from us, about an hour away. and he lives off of Silverthorne Road on the eastern side of Shasta Lake, and he owned Silverthorne Resort for many years and had a houseboat there that he called the Troubadour. He liked it so much that he had a square hole cut next to his dining room table, so he could fish when he was eating dinner. A lot of people don't know that. I'll tell you something else about Merle that's really funny, because people will tell you he was really a problem guy, and he had this this baseball hat that said "asshole" on it, and he loved that hat. He would wear that thing, and he was so proud. And that's when he was happy, and he thought it was such a great hat that he sent one to Hank Williams Jr. And in Reading, there's this little cafe where he would eat breakfast. People would come up to him wearing this hat, right? And they'd go, "Excuse me, you look a lot like Merle Haggard." And he'd go, "People say that." "No, my name's Larry Lang." And that guy goes, "Yeah, actually, you're much nicer than I've heard Merle Haggard is." But there's my best friend of my life, Jeffrey Patty, and he's the guy that I climbed Mount Shasta with the first time. We did a lot of expeditions. We got hired to look for Bigfoot, believe it or not. We did over 10,000 miles together, and he, after a while, he's a big guy, 6'5", 220, and we'd fish, hike, travel, everywhere. He had his dog and I had mine, and there we went off trail into Blue Creek in the south of Orleans in Northern California, in the Klamath National Forest. There's no trails. And we figured that Bigfoot might be down there. And the only way that Bigfoot could get up and down is walking up and down the stream, because there is so much tree footage. Bigfoot 8 feet tall, wouldn't want to have to duck down all the time. So we end up on the wrong side of this creek, and there's Jeff. He took 3 cameras with him, and when we published this one in the Sunday Chronicle, his dad called him and he goes, "You're supposed to be a professional photographer. You didn't use that little camera, the little Olympus on the trail, did you?" And he said he got in trouble for that. But anyway, this is my favorite picture that he took. That's my brother and me going up a snow ice cover, about a 2,000-foot climb over a spot called Wotan's Throne. When the snow's not there, there's more than 100 switchbacks to get up to Trailcrest at 13,400 feet in there. And then from there, you go up to the summit of Whitney. It's 14,505, I think. And anyway, Jeff took this picture. It's my favorite, but this is the one that he got famous on. And this is after we did the John Muir Trail the first time. That's my brother and me on each side of our friend Mike, who did about half the trip. And this is the picture that they made posters out of. It was in all the bookstores. It was on a book cover of mine. And it was the picture that really put him on the map as a great photographer. And that's him and me clowning at a lake with my canoe. And, well, the thing is, the second time that my life stopped that week, it turns out they had to put a blood drain in my head because I had so much fluid and blood. And with a really large tumor, they were thought that I would overheat and have a massive seizure and stroke and die. And then I did. I didn't have a seizure or stroke, but my heart stopped again. And the second time, Jeff showed up. And I remember this like it just happened today, this morning. He was giving me instructions, and he told me to go to Applejacks in La Honda, a place that we used to hang out. And it's a dive bar, basically. And he goes, "Go up and order a Pabst Blue Ribbon on tap." I didn't even know if they had that. And then tip the woman good who serves you, then go sit in the corner and wait for a sign from me. So the weekend before a Monday brain surgery, I ended up having, 7 of them? And I think this is like number 4 or 5. Denise and me drove up to Apple Jacks. They did have Pabst Blue Ribbon on draft. Couldn't believe it. I ordered one. We went down the corner. We sat there for an hour waiting for a sign. Nothing ever happened. But it was great knowing my best pal. He passed away 20 years ago from cancer. And he was still out there looking out for me. Meant a lot to me. And this is what you wear when you get a CyberKnife. And what that is it's controlled by computer in another room by 3 neurosurgeons. And they do a burn with radiation on micro-sized cancer tumors to burn them out of your head. And it's good for other things throughout your body where surgery is too hard to reach. It's only available a few places. That's how I ended up back at Stanford. And so the way they operated on me is they would cut the tumors out of my head. And then they wouldn't ever cut into the brain. That's why I'm here. There was no brain damage. Then they would come back with the CyberKnife and burn what was left out. How much? I have 7 of those? To the point they don't really want to do it anymore. But Dr. Chang said last week, don't worry, I have more tricks. But after all that, this is what my 5th brain surgery looked like when I got out. And you can see they got rid of most of the hair up there. And that's pretty standard. And this is what the next one looked like. This was my 6th brain surgery. And the first 3 we didn't photograph because I was in trouble still. And but that's what it looks like. And you got to trust these doctors. They're the best they are. And wherever you get your medicine, get the best. Don't settle. Never settle. And that's how I ended up at Stanford. Gary Bechtel got me in. I got Dr. Chang. And then I got the best staff imaginable to help. And I felt so good after the 5 brain surgeries that Denise and me went out for dinner to see a concert. We saw Boss Skaggs play that night and had a ball. And there were times during the concert I felt like he was playing just for us. The whole place seemed empty. He was like it was for us. It was incredible. And so the other episode, there's supposed to be a clock in here. I'm just checking. There it is. 6:30. Okay, thank you. When I was in college, I paid my way through college. And so I had to take every job I could get. And so I was only getting paid $5 to $10 a story freelancing for Associated Press, United Press International, and all the Peninsula newspapers, covering local sports events, writing them up, turning them in, getting my $10. And except I wasn't making enough money to pay for college and all my books and everything. So I took a job at a gas station in Menlo Park, what used to be a Beacon station. We went by it about 2 weeks ago, and it's been renamed and rebuilt a little bit, but it's still the same place. And this guy asked for change for $1, and I told him to go away. He said away was next door at a place called the Oasis that is closed last year. And I knew that they didn't have a phone there. So I knew he did need a quarter. And he goes, man, I got to call a woman. And I felt sorry for him. And that just about cost me my life right in the next minute, because I let him in. I got 4 quarters out of the till, and he hit me in the back of the head as hard as he could and split my head open. And then I went down. I was bleeding out on the cement, and I even was feeling, get really dizzy. And what happened? And you're getting the short version. just, I looked back, I saw him getting ready to make another swing, and I was able to, it was coming up in like slow motion. When your brain is injured, it works with such incredible speed. It's like a camera being filmed at fast motion, that when it plays back in regular speed, it looks really slow. And so I could see his hand and hatchet coming up towards me, that he was going for a second shot. And I was able to move my hand up. I literally saw my hand moving like an inch at a time. And I deflected it just barely into my back. And then I went down. And then I looked up. Through my eyes, I could see him up there. He was getting ready to do the kill shot. And right then, this car drove up. And it was his getaway driver. And he grabbed the till and ran out, and that saved my life right in that moment. And then on the trip from the gas station to Stanford Hospital, the guys in the ambulance, the paramedics, they stopped the bleeding. They saved my life. And then I got into Stanford, and they gave me, they did their full thing, The great news is, because of the bleeding, I didn't have brain damage. There was no stored up blood inside me because it had all come out. And so they ended up sewing it up. And I was pretty screwed up after that, as you probably figure. And the long version of exactly how it felt is in the book. And but there's the story. It ran across the top of the page when they arrested the guy. And I testified against him. And he got sentenced to 5 years to life. And they let him out in 3 years. Yeah, and in fact, when they let him out, the sheriff who arrested him and the district attorney who prosecuted him, they called me together. And they said, they saw my picture in the Sunday paper. And they go, you probably don't know this, but the guy that hit you, they're letting him out. And he's going to be in San Jose. And in fact, you go, we see that you're an outdoors guy now, and you probably fish, hunt, hike, camp, do all that stuff. I go, yeah. And they go, so you probably have some guns. I go, yeah, I do. They go, well, if something were to happen to Frank Carrasco, we don't think it'd be investigated very much because we're not happy that they let him out. You know what? I never did it. I would go off day after day by myself with my dog, and sometimes with Jeff and his dog, because he had had a really severe head injury on Highway 80 in a terrible car accident where his head hit the top of the steering wheel and completely messed his head up and caved him in. Anyway, the point of this is, for the next 10 or 20 years, I was fortunate that I had editors at the Chronicle and the Examiner that understood how my life worked. And they were okay with me roaming around pretty much all the time and writing a story every morning for them. And there are a lot of times, I had one event where I met with the CBS program director for television for the West Coast, and we were talking about starting a TV show together, and it really wasn't going very well. It didn't seem like, it's almost like he expected me to raise the advertising, and I just had to get out of there. And I took off. I didn't stop driving until I got through Yosemite to Tuolumne Meadows, and then hiked like 5 miles. And then I sat down to my campfire and thought it over. I thought that was normal behavior. I did that kind of stuff all the time. And sometimes I would call Jeff, drive 300 miles and meet him, then we'd head up into Washington or Oregon or Southern Sierra, and that's just how we rolled. And I learned how to fly in that time process and bought that airplane. And I flew about 2,000 hours in it. And I could go from wherever I was in Northern California, take an arc with a pencil and put your tip on Vancouver, Canada, over to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, down to Van Nuys, California, and everything in between there. I could get there in 4 hours. And did. I flew 3 times a week. And at one point, the editor of the Chronicle called me in and said, you haven't been in here in a long time. And he goes, you've got staff members here concerned that you're getting special treatment. And I go, well, I come in more than you think. He goes, no, you don't. Here's all the mail that you've gotten. 7 months. And I go, well, I don't want anything to get in the way of my stories. And he goes, now, how often would you be willing to come in at least to get your mail? I go, how about once a month? He goes, done. And then the sports editor said, that sounds good. And the editor goes, you would have gone for less. But that did happen. And I love flying that plane. I did fly everywhere. I was chasing my wife, Denise, and offered to take her to fly to Jackson Hole and then rent a car and go up to see the Grand Tetons in Yellowstone. She turned me down. And up in the Arctic, my dad, next to a float plane, I went up in different classifications. I've probably spent 25 different days in float planes in not only Canada and Alaska, but in the Arctic. This was at Nimpo Lake in Canada, west of Quesnel. And another thing is I have this little book in my boat. It's called The Flying Fisherman by Gadabout Gaddis. And that was a TV show that was on Saturdays when I was a little boy. And he would fly his little Cessna someplace every week and go fishing. And that was the whole half-hour show. And I go, I want to be just like him. So I read a chapter of that book on every fishing trip. But the stuff that's happened, and I'll wind it up here. This is an 8-pound trout I caught in Alaska that we release all of our fish, of course. Because if you keep a fish, you know what can happen? This guy can show up. And that did happen to me. And there's a story about how I was charged by a 1,000-pound grizzly bear on Moraine Creek in Alaska in Katmai National Park. It's one of my favorite stories in the book. And then there's another story where in Reno, my buddy Dave Zimmer and me, we went out of town looking for a new trailhead. And all of a sudden we got pulled over by a Reno cop. And next thing you know, he gets me out, he pulls his gun on my forehead. He thought we had just robbed a bank and shot somebody. We matched the description. And that's a good story up in the book. And there's another one where I hiked up Mill Creek on the south side. That area burned last year. There's a trail on the north side of the creek. I went up the other side, and I saw this wild cow come out. And it disappeared. I took a shot with my black powder gun in the dirt in front of it, thinking that would scare him away. No. Duh. So I named him BDS, Big, Dumb, and Stupid. And I walked up for I didn't see anything. I started looking for Indian artifacts, which are in the area. It's the land of Ishi, the last wild Indian in California. Pretty incredible. And then I come around this corner, and there he is, 30 feet away. He comes straight at me. He didn't have horns like a Texas Longhorn, but that's pretty good representation. And to get out of the way, to get him from putting it right through me, I had to jump over a rock on the right side and landed and rolled, and he just kept going. And it turned out that's happened to several people in that area. This is a trip to Costa Rica, and to show you how things can change. This is back when I could bench press 250 pounds, and a famous sports writer who's here could dunk. Am I right? Anyway, Steve Hopkins and me, the owner of Hopkins Acura along Highway 80 near Fairfield, we caught 77, caught and released 77 tarpon and a 500-pound black sea bass in 5 days, right where this river feeds into the Caribbean Sea. And we really had it wired, and that was really fun. And that, believe it or not, is a trout. They just missed the world record, 42 pounds, 53 inches, caught up in the Arctic. And that's the lure I use. This small one is about 2 inches long. That's your typical lure. And that's what I use to catch him. How we doing?
I think it's time.
Okay, anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions at all, please send them to Dan, and he'll control the next portion of the show.
I've got a couple questions for you before we get there. You going to sit down, or are you going to?
No, I'm good.
All right, I'll stand up too then. I want to go back to the beginning of your cancer diagnosis. First, I want to note that I checked Amazon last night to see where your book was ranking, if I could see that, and I saw it was number 1, I think, in health and spirituality. So it's selling.
That's great.
But, you showed a picture of your climb on Mount Whitney, and I believe your book starts with a climb on Mount Whitney.
Yes.
Where you got broiled.
Yeah, it was climbing at Snowfield. I didn't believe in wearing a lot of hats, and back then, nobody wore sunscreen, except on the advertisements where women would try to get tan wearing
Copper tone.
copper tone. Anyway, going up that snowfield, I got a double shot of sun, both direct and reflected off the snow ice. By the time I got to Trail Crest at the top, my brother said I was boiled like a lobster. And we just took that stuff for granted. We were out there all the time. After I did the John Muir Trail, I went to the Arctic for a week. And then I had ankle surgery because I hiked it with a broken ankle. And the doctor, when he saw he looked at the surgery that he had to do, he looked at it and said, he goes, Tom, there's no way you just hike the John Muir Trail, start to finish, Mount Whitney to Yosemite Valley. He goes, but don't worry. He goes, I won't tell anybody. He goes, I read your fish report too.
Well, I wanted to ask about how did you hurt your ankle on that hike? And it was early on, right? And you did most of the hike with a bad ankle.
Yeah, what happened is I originally broke my ankle in a baseball game where I went out of the park that was foul. And really, I couldn't believe it. I was upset so here I am back at the plate. I hit a hard single to left center, and I just kept going to second base, and I broke it sliding into second base. And so and then what happened, coming down from Whitney, down toward this little lake called, what's that? Well, anyway, down to about 12,000 feet, I had my pack weighed too much. It was too much for the way the ankle had grown back, and it chipped off clean. And so it was floating around for the rest of the trip. It was okay going up where I was in a locked position, but going down, if you did this, no, that was pretty much unbelievable, the amount of pain going down hills.
Well, let's go back to all this sun exposure you had. Mm-hmm. What kind of cancer was this?
Thank you for asking. I was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma cancer. And they figure I got it from so much time in direct sunlight. But fishing on the bay, which I did an awful lot, and also the times in the high country, high Sierra, above snowline, in the Arctic, and everywhere. Just being out all the time, sometimes 200 plus days a year.
Yeah, and when you see a picture of somebody going up a snowfield like that, you're getting a double dose, right? You're getting it right back in the face off the snow.
That's right, and it's happened to a lot of people, famous people. I put them in my book. So you need to wear a wide brimmed hat that really helps keep the sun off you, and also to wear sunscreen that 50 is, I think, as good as it gets. I've heard of people wearing 100, but it doesn't do that much more than 50. So yeah, you have to take care of yourself. I lived with, when I lived in Palo Alto, we had a house with 5 bedrooms. We rented 4 of them out to Stanford medical students. I started looking at all their books. Man, there are so many things you can get. It's unbelievable. So you want to do everything you can to put your self-defenses up so you don't end up getting treated by a doctor.
Is he, Denise, is he cooperative about sunscreen?
Oh, yeah, he is. He's doing, now he is.
She said yes. Now I am.
Right. Hey, thank you. As I said, your book is #1 in health and spirituality, and there's a strong element of spirituality in the story you're telling about your conversations after your life temporarily ended.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask about what your take on the world is spiritually and maybe religiously.
Well, what happened when I was in the hospital that first week, where I was 50-50, they said, Dusty Baker, who's coming out with his book in about 2 weeks, he made contact with me from Texas several times. And he was talking about why am I still alive? And he had cancer, and he survived it through surgery at Stanford. And what he said to me was a couple things, but one of them was, "You're still alive, Tom, because there's more for you to do." And I believe in that. And he also said, we talked about faith and praying, and I feel like I've had so many prayers answered in my life. Like, look at my wife. That was my prayer. And it was answered. That I felt like pretty humbled that I've had so many prayers answered. And Dusty said, no, there's no limit on prayer and how many you can have answered. No limit.
Do you envision a specific higher power?
I do, and it's because of what I've been through. And I'm not so much boiled into one religion itself. I've been all over the world pretty much. Many paths, one truth. That's what I believe. So no matter where you are, you're all rooting for the same boss. You know?
All right. You tell a couple stories in the book about near drownings. Really no joke episodes. You mentioned Blue Creek here with your friend Jeffrey Patty. He was one person who fished you out of the drink. I think your brother Rambob got you out. Question I had, maybe you want to describe what happened in those episodes, but the question I had is, like, how does going through something like that sort of change how you approach the next adventure?
Well, the one with my brother, I've almost drowned 3 times. In one river episode, I was underwater for about 11 seconds, they said, going through a rapid underwater. Another one, probably about the same, and my best friend, he was so big that I saw his hand. I couldn't get up to where the air was. I grabbed his hand, and my propulsion downstream pulled him right into the river, but it was into the shallow so we could crawl out. And that's how he saved my life. With my brother, it was at a small lake in Oregon, along the Cascade Range, and the water temperature was about 34 to 38 degrees. And I was in my canoe, and I was giving people different trips on the front of the canoe. And Jeff and me had learned how to do what's called an Ojibwe stroke, or J-stroke. That's where you pull the canoe or paddle straight back, and then at the end, you pull it off like a J, the shape of a J. And by doing that, you can make that canoe go straight as an arrow without having to move the paddle back and forth. I see people all the time, paddle here, then paddle over here. You don't have to do that if you know the J-stroke. But without somebody up front in the boat, the weight was wrong. When I did a J-stroke, it flipped the canoe right over. And I was out there, he said 5 minutes of disorientation trying to figure out what was going on. And he finally, I felt like I was fine. And finally, I saw how worried everybody looked. And I put the canoe, I got on top of it and worked my way in. And that's the thing about wearing life jackets. They don't necessarily save your life. They don't. You have to do more than just think that something else is going to save you. And so I knew I had to get to shore. So I used the canoe as a float. And I thought I was kicking it in, but my brother said I wasn't making any headway at all. So he took his clothes off, got in that cold water, swam out to me, and when he grabbed the front of the canoe, he goes, "Oh!" And I go, "Great, yeah, he's going to drown too." No, he ended up just out of pure effort, motivation, and power, and strength, and the need to do it. He kick paddled us into shore and saved my life.
And did it change the way you approach the next adventure out on the water?
Yeah, it did. It changed everything. I have become skilled in 25 different parts of the outdoor experience. For every one, I find somebody who's the best at it there is in America. And I go to them to have them be my mentor and teach me everything they know. Because everybody thinks they're going to rise to the occasion. And I learned at a place called Gunsight in northern Arizona, near Prescott. That's not what happens. You default to your level of training. So, especially successful men think they're always going to handle whatever they face. That is not what happens. All you can do is what you know and what you've been taught. And so, yeah, it did affect me. And I've even for fly fishing, I have a mentor for casting.
Well, we have some good questions from the audience, and I think I'll start into those. First, does being connected to nature help you through your cancer diagnosis?
The answer is absolutely. I'm out there every morning, like this winter in the mountains. It could be 14, 15 degrees. I know after about 100 or 150 yards, I'm not going to feel cold anymore. And after about a mile, the endorphins start going off. So it makes you feel good. And that's why that's a secret that I learned from a guy that did the 3 major trails in America. And that's how he did three in 10 months. Continental Divide Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, and Appalachian Trail. And he taught me this. I've learned it from doing it. And while I'm out there, I'm able to process through everything. I'm like listening to the birds and trying to identify every bird by their call. I'm trying to think about the next thing I'm going to do or write. You know, I'm working on stuff all the time. I'm never just plowing ahead. It might look like that because I'm pretty slow.
In many of your photos, you wear a bear claw necklace, and I would say not just in your photos. Is there a good story that goes with the bear claw?
Yeah, this bear claw, a lot of people think that means I must have killed a grizzly bear. No, actually what happened is this guy was fishing in Alaska, and he saw this boulder along the shore of this creek bobbing in the current a little bit. And he said, "That's weird." So he went over to the boulder and picked it up, and it was a skull. And he turned it upside down, and this fell out of the eye hole. And as best as the National Park Rangers can figure, it was over 100 years old from the Alaskan Gold Rush in like 1903, and where some guy took on a bear and was back to him, and the bear came out and whacked him in the back of the head, and he lost his claw in his head. And that's the story. I got it through Larry Green, a mentor, an outdoor writer of mine. And he used to be the fisherman's forecast on KCBS radio. I ended up getting that job when he passed. But his wife picked this out and gave it to me. And they always said, "You were the only guy that could wear this."
Tom, thank you for the Juniper Lake recommendation. Can you say a little about your relationship and collaboration with Dusty Baker? And are you a Giants fan or a Dodgers fan?
Yeah, I am an avid Giants fan. Yeah. When I was a kid, the teachers told me I could be anything I wanted to if I just tried hard enough. I believed them. So I wanted to be a professional baseball player and start on the Giants. And I did get scouted. My senior year, my first time up, there were some scouts, and first pitch I saw, I hit it. When it went over the left fielder's head, it was like going in an orbit to the moon. And I ran into that scout at a book signing, and I said to him, he goes, "You probably don't remember me, but I scouted you." And I go, "Of course I remember you. How can you guys pass on me?" I go, "I was counting on that." And he goes, "I don't know. I remembered you could hit the ball a mile." He goes, so he got all of his scout books out the next week, called me up and said, "I found you. There it is. Tom Steenstra, NP." I go, "NP? How could you have NP'd me?" NP means no prospect. And he goes, "Do you remember that ball you hit over that left fielder's?" And I go, "Yeah, I've been out of every baseball park in the major leagues." He goes, "Yeah?" He goes, "Remember what happened after you hit it?" And I go, "A little." He goes, "Yeah, you got thrown out at third base." He goes, I timed you running around the bases. And I talked to the other scouts. I thought there was something wrong with my stopwatch. He goes, "We all had the same time, and we all agreed right then. You were the slowest guy we've ever scouted in our careers."
Question on your guidebooks. We rely on your moon guides, such as California Camping in particular. In particular, the 1 to 10 rating. Yours are the only ratings we trust. Never camp at a campground with a rating of less than 7. How do you rate sites? What are your criteria?
How good the food is that night. No. No, actually, the reason I wrote that book was for myself originally, because I was out all the time and never wanted to get stuck. On one time on a trip to Clear Lake, my brother and me could not find a place to camp because the state park was full, and we didn't know any place else to go. Common problem with a lot of people. They go to Yosemite, they go to a state park, they go to Tahoe, they can't find a campsite. And we ended up camping, it turns out. We almost got landed on by an airplane. It was a dirt run strip. And a sheriff showed up and said, he looked, wanted my ID, and he looked at it, he goes, Tom Stanestra? He goes, "Are you that outdoors guy?" I go, "Yeah, that's me." He goes, "What are you camping here for?" I go, "We couldn't find a spot." And he goes, "You should know every campsite there is in California so this never happens to you." And I said, "Tell you what, you let me off this, I'll do that book, and I'll make sure you get one of the first copies." And he goes, "Deal." That's how I got out of it, but I had to write the book.
Nicely done. What is your favorite hike at Point Reyes and why?
My favorite hike is probably the most common that people is the entire Coast Trail, the start to finish. You can do it in 2 days. I've done it in more with side trips up to Inverness Ridge and back down. You end up with some of the, if it's a clear day and you get some of the best ocean views and sunsets imaginable anywhere in the hemisphere. And on one trip, at the first camp, right over there was like, the surf was so calm, there was only like 2 little waves. Beyond that, the third little ruffle there was a whale and its baby whale came right up in front of us. And where are you going to go in the world and have that experience? You have it right here in our backyard. But that's my favorite trail in the Bay Area.
What are your thoughts on the return of wolves now in Northern California and actually expanding their range?
The problem with wolves is the same problem with, say, coyotes and bobcats, mountain lions. All they eat is meat. They're 100% predator, and they only eat meat. See, bears will eat just about anything. Bears will eat grass. They'll take a beehive apart and eat all the honey, and bears aren't really a problem at all. But wolves are a potential problem if they get hungry. If you have a small cat that's outside, it can be history. You don't even know what happened. And the same's happening Northern California near Oregon, where just about 100% of their diet has become baby cows because they can catch them and eat them. And that's a real problem. And so down here in the Bay Area, I don't think wolves would be that much of a problem, except for people with small dogs and cats.
Like coyotes.
Yes, they behave similar to coyotes.
All right, here's somebody who wants to know about the breadth of your exploring experience. Have you hiked Mount Rainier?
That's a good question. No, Rainier is one of the ones I haven't hiked. And it's supposed to be harder than Shasta. And I have planned to do it a couple times, but every single time I got weathered out, where it was impassable. And I guided a guy up Shasta who had climbed every single summit in the volcanic circuit, as we call it, except for Shasta. And he was saying, yeah, Rainier is tough.
You were making it sound like Mount Shasta is a walk in the park. I've got to note that it's 14,000 foot elevation, and I've experienced that there's not as much what we breathe up there.
Yeah, once you get over Red Banks at the base of Misery Hill, it's over 12,000 feet, almost 13. And at that point, a lot of people have a real problem with the lack of oxygen. And there is a way around that, is you set up a base camp at Treeline at 8,000 feet for a day or two, and just don't worry about how that's going to take longer, and get more acclimated to the high altitude. The opposite of that is guys, especially from Los Angeles and the Bay Area, who are extremely fit and active, and they're used to doing anything they want, whenever they want, and they go from sea level, 1,000 feet here, like right here. This is really low altitude. Up, and they go up to the trailhead at 8,000, or just under that, 6,800, and then they go up too fast on Shasta, and their bodies are not acclimated to the low oxygen in the air. And those are the guys that get in trouble. Yeah. And they can be the most fit people you've ever seen or heard about. And those are the guys that get in trouble the most.
Right, just a couple more. Thank you for recommending Skyline to the Sea for me in the Chronicle 15 years ago. Any recommendations when climbing Mount Talek, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, in the Tahoe area this summer?
Yeah, Mount Talek is the high peak in the southwest end of Lake Tahoe. It's northwest of Fallen Leaf Lake, and there's 2 routes to get up to the top of it, and they couldn't be farther apart. It's like the difference from the North Pole and the South Pole. The one that's called the Mount Talek Trail is just east of the lake, north of the lake, and it goes straight up that side. Don't do that. It's terrible. It's not. I don't know. Maybe a goat invented that trail. No, if you go past that turnoff and head back into the edge of the Wilderness Trailhead, there's a trail that goes back to Gilman Lake and then the backside of Talek. And that trail is doable in a day. I've done it a couple times. And the view from the top of Lake Tahoe, world class, incredible. Even your telephone cameras, if you put it in the mode where you can do a scan for a panorama, you can get a picture this wide of the entire lake. It's incredible, vivid, and you love it. You'll treasure that. Put it on your wall.
Right, you're saying so do it.
Yeah, but don't do it wrong.
All right, and I think this is the last question. What's one trail in California you would say is the most magical for whatever reason, hiking, swimming, views, or camping? And thank you. You are wonderful.
Thank you very much. My favorite trail, probably, think about it for a second, because some of my favorite trails are in the redwoods, but they don't lead to lake ends with great swimming and fishing. But there is a place in the Trinity Alps that nobody goes to, and it's called Little South Fork Lake. And if you look at it on the map, you'll find out that there's no trails to it. And what you'll find is what I found. You show me a place that doesn't have a trail to it, and there will be nobody there. And in fact, there's a phenomenon in the Bay Area that I've made my whole career on. I call it joining my 5% club. When you fly, you look down, like just in the Bay Area, you see 60, 70 lakes in the Bay Area. I mean, how many, if you were to write them down right now, how many could you think of? 4 or 5 maybe? No, they're all there, but you can't see them from the road because everybody drives on these roads. I call it the tunnel syndrome. It's like you're driving in a tunnel. The only thing you become aware of after a while are the brake lights ahead of you and the guy behind you on your bumper. And everybody is in this tunnel driving around. And if I could take you for an airplane flight, or you hire somebody to take you up, just 2,000 feet and look down at where you live. Everything looks so different. And the number of hidden trails, hidden roads, hidden lakes, surprise streams, even in our area, which has almost 10 million people in it, I can still find a place to myself every day of the year. And it's just kind of like little South Fork Lake. Nobody goes there, even though it's some of the best swimming and fishing in California. And the camping is incredible there too. It's one of a kind. But that's the answer to that question. Join the 5% Club.
All right. Tom, it's so great to see you. So great to hear all of your stories. And I'm sure people will want to be tracking you down out there where there will be copies of Heaven Delayed for sale with the author present.
Yeah, in fact, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing the book myself. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen 2 copies so far when I got here. That's it. I got a call this morning that they were going to be here, so that's pretty exciting for me too.
All right. Again, we want to thank Tom Steenstra for coming down here from far away Siskiyou County. For information about the Commonwealth Club World Affairs membership and upcoming programs, please visit commonwealthclub.org. I'm Dan Brecky, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.